I don't accept.
There is the impression that from day one, the two of you refused to cooperate with the police.
No, that is a media myth. Linda Arndt's ability to look in someone's eyes and determine they were a killer is a remarkable talent.
Was bedwetting a source of tension in your house?
Absolutely not. All children have accidents.
One of the mysteries cited in newspaper stories was a lack of footprints outside the house. There was snow, but no footprints in the snow.
I'm Marcus Wren, creator of the TELL Index, a 50-signal system for analyzing statements and behavior in criminal cases. Today's video breaks down John and Patsy Ramsey's first 2020 interview with Barbara Walters, timed to the release of their book, The Death of Innocence, roughly 3 years after their daughter's murder. Subscribe if you want more analysis like this.
The ransom note was written on a pad and a pen from your home. And the question is, if the intruder was planning to write a note, why wouldn't he or she have brought their own pad and paper?
They knew that the less they brought in the house, the better.
But they planned to write a note?
Apparently.
Before or after the crime?
I think the note was written before the crime was committed.
Pressed on why an intruder would use paper and a pen already inside the house instead of bringing their own, John's answer is that they knew that the less they brought in the house, the better, and that the note was likely written before the murder took place. This is Code C4, staging mismatch. Checking whether a piece of physical evidence fits an outside intruder narrative or fits a narrative someone already inside the house could construct. Cross-referenced against forensic document examination, the note argues against an outside intruder in more specific ways than John addresses. Colorado Bureau of Investigation examiner Chet Ubowski found that 24 of the 26 letters in the alphabet in the note appeared consistent with Patsy Ramsey's own handwriting, a detail confirmed years later in investigator Steve Thomas's own account of the case. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente in CBS's 2016 The Case of John and Ramsey calculated that the 2.5-page note would have taken roughly 21 to 22 minutes to compose by hand, with at least one practice draft found in the same notepad, a length of time an unfamiliar intruder would need to spend, undetected, inside a house with 3 sleeping occupants. According to notes from Steve Thomas's book, the FBI's Crimes Against Children Unit reviewed the case against more than 1,700 child murder cases studied since the 1960s and found exactly one other case combining a female victim under 12 killed inside her own home with a ransom note present. And their conclusion was that there had never been a kidnapping attempt. John frames the note's placement inside the household's own supplies as a deliberate intruder tactic to minimize evidence. The more specific detail, that the handwriting itself was independently matched to the person now explaining the theory, goes unaddressed.
There is the impression that from day one, the two of you refused to cooperate with the police.
No, that is a media myth. We met with the police on the 26th. We met
talked with them.
And talked with them for hours on the 27th. When they asked us to come to the police station, we said, yeah, we want to keep working with you, but can't you come here? We can't go out. Patsy was in bed. Patsy was barely able to move, and all we asked was they come here. They said, well, no, we have paperwork at the police station we might need to get a hold of.
Okay. On the 27th, a very good friend of yours, Mike Bynum, said to you, I think that you should hire lawyers.
Asked about the impression that the Ramseys refused to cooperate from day one, John flatly calls it a media myth, pointing to hours of conversation with police on December 26th and 27th. This is Code A4, Story Credibility Check, specifically the contradictions criterion, checking a broad denial against the documented timeline of the same events. Cross-referenced against the Associated Press's own timeline of the case, the documented sequence complicates the myth framing. The Ramsey family retained an attorney, a publicist, and private investigators on December 31, 1996, 5 days after the murder, and by John's own account in this interview, immediately after a family friend suggested it on the 27th. Boulder police records, cited by multiple case historians, note that the Ramseys did not sit down for a first formal interrogation until April 30, 1997, 4 months after the crime, and that early requests for an interview were met with conditions that both parents be interviewed together at their attorney's office with a doctor present, capped at 1 hour, with input on which officer would conduct it. Talking informally with detectives in your own home in the first 48 hours, while your attorneys negotiate conditions that delay a formal interrogation for 4 months, are two different things being described with the same word, cooperation. The gap between "we talked for hours" and 4 months before any formal interview is the part the media myth framing doesn't address.
Was bedwetting a source of tension in your house?
Absolutely not. All children have accidents.
The motive is that John Bonet wet her bed, and that you got angry, you lost it, you snapped, you killed her, perhaps accidentally.
Asked whether bedwetting was ever a source of tension, Patsy answers, absolutely not, and later calls the entire subject totally insignificant next to the perspective gained from surviving cancer. This is code A4, checking a dismissive framing of a subject against the documented medical findings connected to it. Cross-referenced against the case's medical record, the subject carries more evidentiary weight than insignificant suggests. Following John Bonet's autopsy, a panel of pediatric specialists convened in September 1997, including Dr. John McCann, a clinical professor specializing in child sexual abuse evaluation, reviewed the findings and concluded the physical evidence was consistent with chronic prior trauma to the hymen, not solely injury from the night of the murder. Dr. Richard Krugman, then dean of the University of Colorado's Health Sciences Center, and a nationally recognized child abuse specialist, reached a related but distinct conclusion. He told investigators the injury pattern was consistent with what he termed toileting rage, anger connected to a child's bathroom accidents, not necessarily a sexual motive. Krugman's assessment became the basis for what former detective Steve Thomas's book calls the bedwetting theory of the case. Whether or not any specific theory built on this evidence is correct, totally insignificant undersells a detail that two independent, named medical specialists treated as one of the more evidentially loaded findings in the entire autopsy.
One of the mysteries cited in newspaper stories was a lack of footprints outside the house. There was snow, but no footprints in the snow, the story said, therefore, no intruder. But these actual police crime scene photographs taken early that morning, before John Bonet's body was discovered, show only scattered patches of snow around the house and clear paths to windows and doors.
The segment itself raises one of the most cited physical objections to the intruder theory. No footprints were found in the snow outside the home the morning John Bonet's body was discovered, despite the theory requiring someone to enter and exit through a window. This is code C4 again, checking whether the physical scene supports an outside intruder or points towards someone who never had to cross exterior snow at all. Cross-referenced against the case's own physical evidence record, the snow question doesn't fully resolve as cleanly as either no footprints, so no intruder, or the reverse. Crime scene photographs taken by police that morning, before John Bonet's body was found, do show only scattered patches of snow rather than a continuous blanket, meaning the absence of footprints in visible snow isn't proof an intruder walked nowhere outside. But that same physical record cuts against the specific exit route the Ramseys' own theory points to. Investigators who examined the basement window at the center of the intruder theory documented an intact spiderweb spanning the window's exterior frame, undisturbed the morning the body was found. A detail multiple independent case researchers have flagged as difficult to reconcile with anyone climbing through that specific opening. The absence of footprints in scattered snow is genuinely ambiguous. An intact spiderweb across the one window at the center of the entire theory is a more specific, harder to explain away problem that the was there snow or wasn't there framing in this segment doesn't touch.
On the 27th, when they asked us to come to the police station, we said, yeah, we want to keep working with you, but can't you come here? We can't go out. Patsy was in bed. Patsy was barely able to move, and all we asked was they come here. They said, well, no, we have paperwork at the police station we might need to get a hold of.
Okay, on the 27th, a very good friend of yours, Mike Bynum, said to you, I think that you should hire lawyers.
John confirms that on December 27th, one day after John Benet's body was found, a family friend, Mike Bynum, a former prosecutor, advised them to hire lawyers, and the family did. This is Code A8, overly rehearsed, checking whether the swift, coordinated assembly of a legal and media response fits the picture of grieving parents reacting moment to moment, or a well-organized effort assembled unusually fast. Cross-referenced against the Associated Press's documented case timeline, the sequence moved with more coordination than a friend suggested it implies. By December 31st, 1996, within 5 days of the murder, the family had retained not just an attorney, but a publicist and private investigators as well, according to the same AP timeline cited by multiple case retrospectives. Assembling a criminal defense attorney, a public relations professional, and investigators, all within days of reporting your child missing and before any formal suspicion had been publicly stated by police, is a more comprehensive response than the framing of one friend's casual suggestion conveys. It doesn't prove guilt on its own. Grieving families facing intense media scrutiny commonly seek legal protection. But the speed and completeness of the team assembled is a detail the "a friend told us to" framing understates. A ransom note written on the family's own notepad, in handwriting a state examiner matched to the mother describing the theory. A detective's field notes, reduced to a joke about reading eyes. A medical finding from 2 named specialists called totally insignificant. A legal and PR team assembled within 5 days described as one friend's passing suggestion. What do you think really happened in that house? Leave a comment below. Subscribe for more analysis in this case series.